Welcome to Creative Piecemeal Podcast, a podcast for creatives. I'm your host, Tammy Takeishi. Join me for compelling conversations with artists, actors, authors, musicians, and other creatives about the impact of the creative and fine arts in their lives and our ever-changing world. Thank you for listening. Hello and welcome to Creative Piecemeal Podcast. Today I am with rock drummer Chris Slade. He has his own band, the Chris Slade Timeline, and they recently released a double album called Timescape just a few weeks ago on July 19th on Brave Words Records. However, you fans of rock and roll music, you might know him from other bands. He was a drummer with AC/DC, The Firm, Mandred Man's Earth Band, Asia, and many, many more. He has an illustrious career, and he's still hitting the drums and having a good time. So I'm really excited to have him on the show to talk about his latest project and all things music.
Hello.
Hello. So why don't we just jump right in and get started about your new album? You wrote or co-wrote nearly every song on there. Can you tell me a little more about that?
I've always written lyrics. In the 70s, I used to write some lyrics for Mandred Man's Earth Band, but I never could or thought of writing melodies. About 2.5 years ago, some melodies started coming to me, and that's never happened before. Lyrics, yes, and they weren't just melodies. They turned into things like, oh, that's a good bass line, or that's a good string line, or, you know, I could put a guitar arpeggio or a keyboard arpeggio in there or something. I've always known how songs worked, you know, chorus, verse, all that stuff, but I could never put one together myself. If somebody else wrote the melody, I could write the lyrics to it. So this was a revelation to me that this should just come out of the blue. I've read other writers saying that I don't know where it comes from, but it just comes to me out of the blue. Everybody said that. Paul McCartney, you know, Bob Dylan, whoever, Bruce Springsteen, they've all said that. I don't know where it comes from. So I've started at a mature age, shall I say, and that started happening to me. And if you go back looking at stuff, Beethoven did it. He used to go into the countryside and he'd hear the wind in the trees and make a melody out of that, you know? So I can understand that, you know, I can hear a car going on the street and think, oh, I wonder if I can put that in a song, you know? It was just very strange to me, and it's still happening. So, you know, maybe there's number 2 album, who knows? But it really was, as I said, a revelation to me that this could happen, and it could happen to me, you know. So people out there, keep your ears open, you know, because it could happen to you. You never know. You just never know. There's no difference between you or Paul McCartney, you know.
I love that. I love how you embraced the musical journey and where it took you, and you weren't afraid to just try something new and see what happened.
Yeah, I've always been sort of searching, I suppose, all my life for all sorts of things. Did a lot of meditation. You know, I was always interested in different things. You know, when people were just into football, perhaps I wouldn't be. I was into Zen Buddhism, and this was in the 70s and 80s. You know, I've always been sort of questing for stuff. Oh, that's a good album title. I'll write that down for next time. So, yes, I'm just glad it's happening. By the way, I didn't mean that I was like Paul McCartney or Bob Dylan when I said that. I was just an analogy. You know, that's where, and Beethoven, you know. No, I'm no Beethoven. I may be a little bit deaf, though.
What's been one of the most surprising things about making your latest album?
That I could make an album, I suppose, and be in charge of an album, because I was really the guys just were always around, and I got so much help from the guys, especially from Michael Clarke, the keyboard player, because I don't play a chordal instrument at all, just
Right.
drums. I just hit things, you know. This was strange, but it was very good because it was a positive experience. Lyrics came easy, melodies came easy, or at least easier. One of the songs, Time Flies, on the album, on the originals album, was the chorus was the last thing I wrote. So I looked at the track I had and thought, oh, it needs a chorus. So I wrote a chorus, just like that. It took sometimes some of those songs took weeks to come together. And if I got an idea, Mike and I do not live far apart. So I would go to Mike's place and demo it. I demoed all the songs on the originals album, except for the ones that the guys wrote themselves. So I always did demos, and they said to me when it came to the song Time Flies, they said, well, and I did the demo, and we got two singers in the band. One does the AC/DC stuff, and one does Mandred Man, Earth Band, Uriah Heep stuff. There's more to it than that. But I demoed the songs with my voice. I've always been able to sing in tune. I've always said I can sing in tune, but I don't have a voice. Can you see? Yeah, so I can go la 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 la. That would be acceptable, but I'm not Elvis Presley or Tom Jones, by any stretch of the imagination. That was just being in charge of the record and getting all that done and having the need, because there was a need for me to finish this. I can't explain it. I had to get them out and down on what I used to call on tape. Of course, it's not these days. It's all digital. And it was a need that was deep rooted. I don't know if I was trying to fulfill myself or what. I couldn't look into that. That would take a psychiatrist. But you got to be pretty. What's the phrase? Oh, if I wasn't crazy, I'd go mad in this business, because it'll drive you crazy. It's my missus says it's not even a business. Why do you call it the music business? Not the music business. It's a terrible place, and it can be sometimes. It can be a backstabbing place to be, and you've got to have rhino hide to survive, and you've got to be, smellier than the horrible stuff, and you just got to be able to take criticism. This business ain't the greatest business in the world. I tried to get my sons, they wanted to be drummers. I said, don't be a drummer, be a guitarist or a keyboard player or even a singer, but don't be a drummer, and they're both drummers. And very good drummers too, actually.
You touched on such an important point that, even though it can be very fulfilling to do something that you love for a living, the music world, the art world, the creative world can be really rough and really demanding. And you sort of have to protect yourself in certain ways, whether it's from like a business aspect or, by like self-care or getting a good practice routine. What are some things that you did throughout your career to make sure you had that longevity of success?
I didn't know I was going to get longevity, to be honest. What did I do? I got on with people. That's the very first thing you must. You must get on with your bandmates. Otherwise, you're lost. If you walk in, you think, oh, I don't like that guy. But he's the bass player. Well, I don't like him. You've already lost the gig, man. So longevity. I wanted to be a drummer all my life. I haven't succeeded yet, thank God. But I'm working on it.
Yeah, the drums are a really cool instrument. And obviously you've played them pretty much your whole life. Has there ever been any other instrument you've wanted to explore, or are you just drums only?
I did do classical guitar for a while, and I really liked that. I think drumming got on the way again of that. I did that for a year or so. I wanted to try bass playing, but I never got to that either. So most people who play guitar can play bass anyway. So maybe I should have learned guitar if I wanted to do that. All the guys in my band can play bass pretty good. And I'm sure it's true of many guitarists. They can just switch to 4 strings instead of 5 or 12 if you want. But they can switch to bass. I've always been curious about that sort of thing. And I looked so deeply into other things. Maybe I should look deeply into music and music theory, perhaps. But that's another kettle of fish. So, oh, that's another album title. Just a minute. I'll write it down.
What's one of your favorite things about playing the drums and being in a band?
What's one of the favorite things?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you said? As you said, drums are cool, to me at least. And I always thought that. I say the drums choose you. You don't choose to play drums. They choose you, whether you're good or bad. And as I said, I've always wanted to play drums. I started listening to Buddy Rich and thought, wow, this man is incredible. Before I even had a drum kit, I thought that. I used to play with 2 knives on a biscuit tin, and my mother let me. So that tells you something. My father was a tap dancer and singer, amateur, of course. He worked in a factory in the day and tap dancer at night. So, and they always encouraged me, like playing on a biscuit tin. Imagine the racket that must have made.
Aw.
So, it's great to have encouraging parents. The best thing about aspiring drummers, best advice or best thing for them, you'd think, oh, it's drum kit. No, it's good neighbors. Because I used to play at home when I was from the age of about 11, maybe 10. My brother taught me to play on his marching drum, and my brother Danny, older brother Danny. I played for years in my front room, and we were an attached house. The neighbors never once in 6, 7 years ever complained. I was always careful, and I wouldn't play it at night or anything. I'd play when I came home from school until my parents came home from work, and I'd still be playing, and I'd stop and wait for the next day. But good neighbors are invaluable when it comes to learning drums, or at least somewhere to practice. I practiced for all those years, and when I started, I hardly practiced at all. People listen to this now, well, yeah, I can tell.
Well, that's wonderful that you had such fond memories and you had that dedication and like you said, encouraging parents and neighbors that were encouraging also, because I'm sure it made it easier for you to focus on what you wanted to do. You didn't have to worry about anything like that. You didn't have to worry about if you were bothering anyone or anything like that.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
If you've been feeling burned out, stressed, overwhelmed, or exhausted, the resources and courses at the Self-Care Institute are here to support you. The Self-Care Institute was founded by Dr. Ami Kunimura and provides support for individuals and organizations with burnout prevention, burnout recovery, and stress management. I've personally taken a few of these courses and found them to be super helpful, both professionally and personally. The care you give yourself matters just as much as the care you give to others. But if self-care is difficult for you, you're not alone. And the Self-Care Institute is here to support your well-being, resilience, and sense of fulfillment at work and at home. For more information, visit selfcareinstitute.com or go to the show notes and click on the link.
Yeah, that's why I don't play at home now, ever, because I'm worried about neighbors or even people in the street. What will they be hearing? Yeah, the requisites of being as a drummer.
You mentioned Buddy Rich earlier, but who are some other musicians that inspired you as you were growing up and getting into the profession?
Well, it was Buddy because he was a jazz drummer, but there were no good pop drummers around. You know, there was Pat Boone. Well, I'm sure they were great drummers, but they weren't allowed to be great drummers when they're doing a ballad or something. Sandy Nelson came along, great drummer, and he had a thing called Let There Be Drums. Lots of people pricked their ears up at that. Ringo Starr, Cozy Powell, many, many people. And they said that in interviews. That's how I know. So I can't remember what year that was, but it was in the 50s, I think.
Mm.
It might have been early 60s. I'm not quite sure, but I think it was the 50s. I got to meet Sandy Nelson when I was living in Las Vegas, and he was living in Boulder City, not too far away, just half an hour in the car. So I got to meet him, and he told me some stories about himself and his life. That was really cool to meet one of I met Buddy Rich a few times, many, 6 maybe. With Sandy, that was cool because he was so influential to many, many drummers. And he was a cool guy anyway. He's no longer with us, I'm afraid. And he was in a wheelchair at the end. But I know he enjoyed his drums. He was very proud of his career also. Cool to sit with him, have a beer and just chat. Very cool, actually, when I think of that boy in Pontypridd, Wales, hearing Let There Be Drums by Sandy Nelson. And then here I am, maybe 50 years, 60 years later, talking to him. It's like, can you imagine how cool that is?
Yeah, that is always nice to be able to, meet someone that you've admired for a long time and you have that connection, the shared connection of both being drummers and, you being inspired by him. That sounds like a wonderful memory to have.
Yeah, it was. And there's things I've met people, a lot of people. Like it was great to meet Dave Grohl, who is also a great drummer, by the way. People forget that. They think he's a singer and frontman. And, I've met a lot of those guys. Elvis Presley, I met. He's not a drummer, by the way. I met him and he offered me a job, actually, playing drums. When I was with Tom and we were working in Vegas, he threw a party for Tom. We went along and he asked me, he didn't ask me in front of Tom, of course, but a little while later, I got a call and he asked me would I be interested in playing drums for him? He was doing a month in Flamingo in Las Vegas, and he didn't have a drummer yet, and I couldn't make it, and Tom's tour kept getting extended. Long story short, I couldn't make it to the last lot of rehearsals. So they said, don't worry, we'll get somebody in, and you can just jump in at the end. I went, okay. So then extended Tom's tour. The guy they got in was Ronnie Tutt, who is a great, great drummer. I used to know him from the Andy Williams. I didn't know him. I used to see him on the Andy Williams show, or hear him at least on the Andy Williams show. So I knew he was a great player. And he ended up being Elvis's drummer, and he did a fantastic job. And there was going to be me and Ronnie playing drums, and that never happened. So, and I don't think Ronnie knows a thing about it, or ever knew anything about it, which is fine by me. Why would he, So that's pretty cool. And I had to say in the end, sorry, Elvis, I'm too busy, man. And playing with Tom Jones was absolutely wonderful. Great experience because I knew him before he was Tom Jones. He was Tommy Woodward from Ponty. He changed his name to Tom Jones. I was Christopher Slade Rees. So I became Chris Slade. Rees is Rees, R-E-E-S, is my family name. But I thought Slade was cooler. It was my mother's maiden name, actually. We all changed our names, the whole band. Bass player changed his. And it was in Piccadilly Circus in London that we changed our names. And it was all together because we were Tommy Scott and the Senators then. Tommy Scott became Tom Jones, the greatest untrained, natural voice ever, in my opinion, because he never had a singing lesson. He was singing like that when he was 17. So, and at 23, by the way, Tom was told he was too old and he should pack in. He should just give up because he's too old now. Because Herman's Hermits are much younger than you and they're coming up the charts. So you should give up because you're not even in the charts. 23. There's those trolls again, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So somebody has an opinion, oh, look, he's geriatric. He's 23. There's a song actually on the original Chris Slade Timeline, Timescape, and it's called Living the Dream. I mentioned that phrase earlier on. You can't live the dream without having self-belief. You must have self-belief. It's a prerequisite for this business. Somebody tells you you're too fat or you're too loud or you're not loud enough or you're terrible at your guitar playing. You must have rhino hide and you must just let it wash over you like water to a duck. Sometimes it hurts. Other times it can be jealousy from another musician who's not as good as you but thinks he's better than you, from a guitarist who has a high opinion of himself. But you shouldn't have such a high opinion that you take it out on somebody else or tell them where they're going wrong. If they ask you, tell them, well, I think you should do this. But if they don't want your advice. So this song, I Believe in Yourself, it's living the dream, but the theme behind it is believe in yourself. Don't listen to anybody else. Believe in you. And that goes through your life then also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. And that goes so far because, having that belief in yourself and, like you said, sort of developing a thick skin that, helps protect people so that they can continue to do what they love and to grow the art and be able to share it with the world and then inspire a whole new generation of people. Like imagine, I mean, what would we do if the Beatles had given up, if Elvis had given up,
Yep. They all had that belief in themselves. Anybody who stuck their head above the parapet must believe in himself or herself. That is another prerequisite. I think anybody who sticks their head above that parapet deserves it, deserves all the success they get.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they got paid to put their head up above the parapet. That's a different matter altogether.
You talked about, believing in yourself, and that's such an important piece of advice, but looking back on your long career, what else would you tell someone entering the business advice-wise?
Don't.
What if they couldn't help it?
Oh, yeah. Well, if they couldn't help it, they've got that self-belief. Like you have to do it. Like I said, there was a need to finish this album. That becomes a real need. I've got to get this done. I've got to get this done. To the point of obsession. It must become an obsession. Playing drums must be an obsession. Acting must be an obsession. Dancing must be an obsession. It all comes down, I think, to that. As a friend of mine, guitarist, Guthrie Govan, said to me, he was with me in Asia, in the band Asia. And trying to recall the exact word. Oh, you become a musician when you can't do anything else. And it's like it sounds a negative thing. It doesn't mean you're not talented in other areas. It means you have to do it when you can't do anything else. In other words, that's the most important thing to you in life, is to play music in some way or drive a car or be a swimming champion or anything like that. When that becomes the predominant thing in your life.
I love that. That is great advice, and that is so true. When people find their passion in life, it really does feel like there's nothing else that one would want to do or have an interest in doing. And even if you wanted to like step away from it, you would miss it if you stepped away from it. It's a yearning.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's like losing your right arm or something. It would be, whether it's guitar, any instrument, saxophone, acting, whatever. It would feel like a loss of a limb or something.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of barriers and struggles, is there anything that you struggled with on your career path that you're comfortable telling the audience about and what you learned about that?
I can't quite get an angle on that, I'm afraid.
That's okay.
Playing drums would be one of them. It comes down to self-belief again, that you must have that. And it's useless unless you do. So cultivate that as best you can. Be as good as you can at your craft, whatever it is, and take it to as far as you want to take it. You know, Clint Eastwood started as an actor, you know, and he was out of work many, many times. But ultimately, he wanted to produce and direct. So he became that, which is a totally different thing to being an actor. So maximize your potential, I think. That's another one. Oh, I'll write that down to maximize your potential. Okay.
You're gonna have a whole new album done by the time we're done with the episode.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, what is one of your favorite things about having done this latest album that came out on July 19th?
One of my favorite songs, well, first of all, the idea that I can do it. And there wasn't anybody going, no, that'll never work. I say that quite often to people, actually. No, that ain't going to work. That's the band joke. Sorry. I've forgotten the question now. I've had so many things going on in my head right now. Back to the album. One of my favorite things on it, or what I consider worked very well, is a song on there called Time Flies.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of magically came together. It just flowed together. As I said earlier on, I didn't have a chorus for it when it was almost finished. But the way that the special effects on that, I won't say what they are because I like people to hear it, be a surprise to them, you know, because I've always put production ideas forward. In Earthband, I was doing that in the 70s. All of us were, by the way. It was a democratic band, Mandred Man's Earth Band. We were all equal, but of course, Manfred was more equal than we were. I love the way that the production ideas came together and it worked. And when it worked, I went like, wow, how did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
And it did. And again, as I said, I don't know where the ideas came from. They just came. And it suited the track. That was really, really nice. And satisfaction, out of that. I got satisfaction out of it. That would be my answer, I think, to your question. And the ability to have done it and done it to a good level, because it never happened before, is what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with Jimmy Page and David Gilmour on different projects, and that was playing drums. Jimmy Page and Paul Rodgers didn't want me writing songs of any kind. In fact, I did write a song during that time, and I took it only to Paul, actually, because it was a bluesy sort of thing. And I played it to him, and he said, "Oh, well done, mate. Good." And that's all he ever said about the song. They've got their own songs, Pagey and Paul. So, they didn't want me. And AC/DC certainly didn't want me writing songs from. They're genius songwriters, Even their arrangements are fantastic. You can't change them half the time because the arrangements are so good. Where the chorus goes and where the verse goes and all that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's an art form. It is an art form, putting that together. That's why there are musical arrangers. I did an album in the 60s for Tom Jones called 13 Smash Hits. And the bass player on that was John Paul Jones of Led Zeppelin, of course.
Wow.
And he was also a great arranger, but it took a long time for people to accept him as an arranger. He did eventually, and he's brilliant at it. I wonder what he did for Led Zeppelin, for instance. I never asked Pagey that, but arranging is an art in itself. Or, put the verse there. Don't do the chorus yet.
Mm-hmm.
Let it go on for another verse. Then put the chorus in. Things like that. It sounds trite, but those are things that a real genius, And Angus and Malcolm Young are geniuses at doing that,
Mm-hmm.
They know exactly what they're doing. Their songs, a lot of them, are pop songs played heavy. Like an analogy would be Britney Spears, because that started off as a metal song, as a really heavy song by a Scandinavian group, and she sort of popped it up. So it can work both ways. So they made a heavy band out of AC/DC, and they're writing really catchy songs with hooks, and Thunderstruck is a case in point. It's a work of genius, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to have that guitar running through it, and the thunder, and it's got the chant, na, na, na. It's got so many hooks in it. It's absolutely fantastic. Genius writers.
Yeah, AC/DC is one of my personal favorite bands, and I mean, it must have been no pun intended, electrifying to be able to play with them and Asia and all these other bands, because you've got that feedback from the drums themselves as you're playing it. It must just fill your whole body with energy.
Yeah, you got to be pretty energetic to be a drummer. Singing and drumming are the most strenuous. People will think singing, but you use your whole body with that.
Mm-hmm.
And you really need strength and energy to put your voice out, no matter what you're singing. Singers know that.
Mm-hmm.
Drummers know that. So it's you got to be fit enough to do that also. I did martial arts most of my life because I was always, as I said, questing after the Zen Buddhism thing. So that sort of took me to martial arts in a philosophical way, actually.
Mm.
Although I fought a bit. Yeah, what can I say? I'm just rabbiting here. That's what we say in Britain. When you talk on,
Yeah, no, I love it though. I love it. Reminiscing and hearing your stories and things of that nature. Before I let you go, I was wondering if you could have dinner with any creative person that you've not met yet, who would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. I've met him, but Jaco Pastorius would be that man. I think he's a fantastic musician, and he's always been a bit of a hero of mine, actually. I played with him once in a club in New York, actually, the Brecker Brothers Club. I can't remember the name of it right now. Went to see him. His band hadn't turned up, so I went with Jimmy Page and Tony Franklin, and the place was packed. I mean, jammed. And his band hadn't showed up, and he was sitting on the edge of the stage. So I went up to him, and I said, "Hey," and the drums were set up, by the way. And I said, "Hey, do you want to play bass with me and entertain the crowd a bit?" Because we've been standing there for about an hour and a half. Nothing had happened, and I got a bit fed up with that. So I went. He said, "Oh, you here with Jimmy Page? Get up on stage." So I got up and we jammed for 25 minutes. And when I came off, guys were kissing me because Jaco was so great, and it was such a great thing. When he started, he put his bass on and he looked at me and went, "Okay, you start." I thought, oh, no pressure. So I started and he immediately joined in. It was absolutely magic. It was wonderful. What a great thing for me, Nobody filmed it because it was before everybody had a cell phone for a start. So dinner with him, yeah, that would have been cool, I'm sure.
That's nice. And what a lovely story that you were able to jam with him and, just have that special moment together and make music.
Yeah, it was wonderful to me, and I'm still buzzing about it, to be honest. What is it? 30 years later, at least, maybe longer. So yes, that's like a claim to fame with no proof at all, except the people were there. Tony Franklin was there. Jimmy Page was there.
You've got a few witnesses. There you go.
Yeah. I think all my Elvis witnesses have passed on now, to be honest.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. Listeners, please check out the Chris Slade Timeline. That's Chris Slade's band, formed back in 2012 with handpicked musicians. And they have a new double album out called Timescape, which just came out a couple of weeks ago. So please check it out in the show notes, a link to be able to purchase the track and hear more about Chris and what they're up to. But any parting words before I let you go for the day?
No, I've really enjoyed it. You let me rabbit on, as I said. Yeah, I've really enjoyed myself. Thank you for indulging me, if you like.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. And listeners, check out the show notes and always keep listening. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Like the show? Have a question? Stop by the Facebook and Instagram pages. Links are in the show notes, or search for Creative Piecemeal Podcast on social media and click follow for all the latest.